First contact with human resilience. Dr. Zarax's crystalline antennae flickered with confusion as he studied the medical readout before him. The patient's vital signs made no logical sense. Multiple fractures, severe tissue damage, yet endorphin levels were off the charts. Looking up from his hovering diagnostic panel, he focused all three of his primary eyes on the human sprawled casually across the examination table. Ambassador Riker, he began, mandibles clicking with carefully measured precision. You have 17 separate injuries requiring immediate attention. The most severe being a compound fracture of your right femur and 3 cracked ribs. Our regenerative chambers can have you fully healed within 3 standard hours. The human laughed, then winced, then laughed again. 3 hours. That's hardly enough time to appreciate these wounds properly, Doc. Besides, I've got this great traditional earth healing method I've been wanting to try. They call it a cast. Fascinating stuff. Really. Primitive but charming. Dr. Zarax's secondary heart began to flutter in distress. The ambassador's medical file was already causing concern among the staff at Galactic Central Medical Station. In the 6 standard months since humans had joined the Interstellar Alliance, Riker had declined regenerative treatment 8 times, opting instead for what the human termed the natural healing experience. Ambassador, please, the regenerative chamber. Just Riker is fine, the human interrupted, attempting to sit up despite the protests of both his injuries and the medical restraint field. And speaking of experiences, you wouldn't believe how I got these particular beauties. Ever heard of something called glacier climbing? The medical AI pinged urgently, noting dangerous spikes in Dr. Zarax's stress hormones. The station's chief medical officer had treated countless species across the galaxy, but none quite like humans. Their peculiar relationship with injury and healing was proving to be more challenging than any xenobiological puzzle he'd encountered in his 3 centuries of practice. The records indicate, Dr. Zarax continued, deliberately ignoring the question about glacier climbing, that you were on a diplomatic mission to Proxima B when these injuries occurred. How does one sustain multiple fractures during trade negotiations? Riker's face lit up. Oh, that's the best part. See, the local crystalline entities were explaining their tradition of solar wind sailing, and I couldn't just take their word for how exhilarating it was, could I? Had to experience it firsthand. Did you know their solar sailors can reach 1/8 light speed? The G-forces are incredible. The medical eye quietly began dispensing calming pheromones into the room's atmosphere as Dr. Zarax's crystalline structure began to vibrate with stress. The human continued, apparently oblivious to the doctor's growing distress. Of course, my environmental suit wasn't quite rated for those speeds, and there was this minor issue with the radiation shielding, but the view of the binary sunset while tumbling through space. Totally worth it. 2 junior medical officers who had been observing the examination quietly excused themselves, their tentacles wrapped tightly around their torsos in what Dr. Zarax recognized as the universal gesture of professional trauma. Ambassador, Riker, Dr. Zarax managed, his voice modulator struggling to maintain a professional tone. Our facilities are the finest in the galaxy. The regenerative chamber would not only heal your injuries, but prevent any long-term tissue damage or scarring. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, Riker exclaimed, reaching for their personal data device with their less injured arm. Look at this collection. Each scar tells a story. This one. Neutron star diving on Kepler 186 FF. This beauty. First human to survive the methane geysers on Titan. Oh, and this particularly gnarly one. Dr. Zarax's crystalline structure began emitting a high-pitched resonance of distress. The medical eye immediately initiated emergency stress protocols for the medical staff, while simultaneously updating its database entry on human psychology with a new category, deliberately cultivated injury memorabilia. Perhaps, Dr. Zarax suggested weakly, we should discuss implementing mandatory psychological evaluations for human patients. Tried that last month. A passing nurse chirped, their bioluminescent patterns flickering with dark humor. The evaluating psychiatrist requested immediate transfer to the quantum plague ward, said it was less stressful. As Riker launched into another enthusiastic description of their adventure collection, Dr. Zorax made 2 urgent notes in the station's medical database. Update human patient classification to voluntary injury enthusiasts. Requisition triple the normal supply of medical staff stress relief medications. It was going to be a very long diplomatic assignment. The psychology of pain. The weekly medical staff meeting at Galactic Central Medical Station had devolved into what Dr. Zorax's species would call a resonance of collective confusion. The hovering display in the center of the conference room showed footage that made several junior staff members' appendages curl in distress. As you can see, Dr. Nix announced, her phosphorescent tentacles dimming with concern, this human is willingly jumping off a perfectly stable orbital platform above Jupiter's moon Europa. She gestured at the recording with 3 of her secondary limbs, without a jetpack, for what they call fun. That's nothing. Dr. Zorax interjected, his crystalline structure still showing stress fractures from his earlier encounter with Ambassador Riker. Yesterday, a human athlete named Jackson arrived with severe plasma burns. Apparently, he's part of something called the Solar Storm Surfers League. The assembled medical staff watched in horror as the display showed more footage of humans engaging in what the station's AI had categorized as deliberately hazardous recreational activities. A junior physician's exoskeleton began stress molting. I don't understand, Dr. Fenka whispered, all 7 of their eyes blinking in sequence. We've provided them with perfect virtual reality simulations. 0 risk, 0 pain. Why do they insist on doing these things in reality? The door to the conference room slid open, and a human in a scorched environmental suit limped in, trailing what appeared to be fragments of asteroid dust. Oh hey, is that K's Europa dive? Classic stuff. Though you should see the footage from last week's Venusian atmospheric freestyle competition. The medical staff collectively backed away, their various biological warning systems firing simultaneously. Dr. Zorax's crystalline resonance reached a pitch that threatened to shatter nearby equipment. Lieutenant Wade, Dr. Nix managed, her translator struggling to maintain composure. You're supposed to be in quarantine after your, what did you call it? Cosmic ray surfing incident. Oh, that. Wade grinned, brushing off some still smoking pieces of their suit. Just a light case of radiation exposure. Nothing compared to the time I tried to high-five a neutron star. Now that was a rush. Speaking of which, anyone want to sign my radiation burns? I'm collecting signatures from different species. 3 more medical staff members quietly excused themselves to the relaxation chambers. The station's AI began automatically dispensing stronger calming agents through the ventilation system. Dr. Zorax pulled up Wade's medical history on his personal display, then immediately regretted it. According to these records, you've declined regenerative treatment 23 times in the past standard month alone. Well, yeah, Wade shrugged, then winced as the motion aggravated several partially healed injuries. How else am I supposed to build up my collection? Check this out. This scar is from the first human attempt at surfing a magnetic field reversal on Mercury. And this one. Got it racing comets through the Oort cloud. Had to do it the old-fashioned way. You know. Let it heal naturally. Dr. Fenka's medical scanner clattered to the floor. Old-fashioned way. You mean deliberately prolonging the healing process. But why? For the stories, of course. Wade beamed, pulling out a personal device loaded with what appeared to be an extensive catalog of injury documentation. Each scar is a memory, each break a badge of honor. Oh, that reminds me. Is the quantum reconstruction chamber still off limits after that little incident with the temporal surfing competition? The medical AI pinged urgently, noting that the relaxation chambers were now at maximum capacity. Dr. Zorax made a mental note to requisition additional chambers, possibly an entire wing's worth. Perhaps, Dr. Nix suggested, her tentacles twisting into what her species' body language indicated was deep existential concern. We should consult the Galactic Medical Ethics Board about implementing some form of mandatory safety protocols for human patients. Tried that, Dr. Zarak sighed, his crystalline structure now showing visible stress fractures. The board reviewed human recreational activities and classified them as incomprehensible, but apparently essential to the species' psychological well-being. Wade perked up. Speaking of recreational activities, anyone want to join my new extreme sports club? We're planning to race solar flares next weekend. Already got 15 signups from the Human Diplomatic Corps. The remaining conscious medical staff huddled together in the corner, their various appendages shaking. Dr. Zarak accessed the station's central database, adding a new entry to the ever-growing file on human psychological phenomena. UPDAT. Human concept of fun appears to be inversely proportional to activity's survival probability. Recommend immediate revision of all medical emergency protocols and significant expansion of trauma response facilities. Also, urgent need for stronger anti-anxiety medications for medical staff. The station's AI quietly began updating its threat assessment protocols, adding human recreational activities to its list of natural disasters and cosmic anomalies requiring maximum emergency response readiness. "Oh," Wade called out as they limped toward the door. "Almost forgot to ask. Anyone know where I can find some antimatter? Got this great idea for an extreme sports version of particle physics experiments." The medical staff's collective stress monitors overloaded and shorted out. Emergency ward chaos. The emergency teleportation pad at Galactic Central Medical Station lit up for the 7th time in what the station's AI calculated had been exactly 2.3 standard hours. Dr. Zarak's crystalline structure was now emitting a constant high-pitched whine of distress. "Incoming human patient," the AI announced with what seemed like resignation in its synthetic voice. "Multiple fractures, severe plasma burns, and is that dark matter residue. Totally worth it," announced the human materializing on the pad, their environmental suits still smoking. First successful recreational dive into a black hole's accretion disk. Well, mostly successful. They attempted to wave, causing several pieces of their suit to fall off. Before Dr. Zarak could respond, 2 more teleportation signals activated. The first brought in a group of humans covered in what appeared to be Jupiter's red spot storm debris. The second deposited a single human whose suit was covered in what the sensors identified as temporal displacement scarring. "The annual Extreme Space Sports Convention," Dr. Nix whispered in horror, her tentacles curling into tight spirals of anxiety. "It's happening on Station 09. We're the closest medical facility." The emergency ward erupted into chaos. Humans began comparing injuries with the enthusiasm of collectors sharing prized possessions. The medical staff's universal translators struggled to keep up with the rapid-fire exchange of what they termed epic stories about how each injury was acquired. "Check out this temporal burn. Nice. But look at this gravitational shear pattern. That's nothing. I got this one free-diving in Venus's upper atmosphere." Dr. Fenka, monitoring the incoming patient data, began blinking all 7 eyes in rapid succession, a sign of extreme distress in their species. They're rating their injuries based on coolness factors. They have a scoring system. The station's AI pinged urgently. "Warning. Human satisfaction levels appear to increase proportionally with injury severity. Paradox detected. Requesting guidance." Dr. Zarak watched in helpless fascination as a human with what appeared to be neutron star radiation burns enthusiastically high-fived another sporting multiple fractures from what they described as asteroid parkour. Both winced, then laughed, then compared notes on their respective adventures. "Should we?" Dr. Nix ventured weakly. "Should we activate the regenerative chambers?" "Don't you dare," chorused several humans in unison. One of them, still trailing comet ice, added, "Do you know how long it took to get these perfect cosmic ray burn patterns?" The medical staff huddled together near the emergency supplies cabinet, which was rapidly running out of stress relief medications. Doctors Arax made a series of urgent notes in the station's medical database. Upgrade human ward with reinforced reality anchors. Temporal surfing accidents increasing. Install additional regenerative chambers, which humans will probably continue to ignore. Requisition stronger psychiatric support for medical staff. Update human patient classification to reality-defying thrill seekers. A. Called out a human covered in what sensors identified as supernova debris. Anyone want to sign up for next week's neutron star polo tournament? 3 more medical staff members quietly entered the relaxation chambers, which were now operating at 300% capacity. The breaking point. The quarterly meeting of the Galactic Medical Ethics Board had devolved into what could only be described as organized panic. Dr. Zarax's presentation on human recreational activities had caused 2 board members to enter voluntary stasis and another to begin spontaneous mitosis, their species' stress response. As you can see, Dr. Zarax continued, his crystalline structure now permanently stressed to the point of iridescence. We've documented over 3,000 unique forms of what humans call extreme sports. Each one appears to be specifically designed to defy basic survival instincts. The holographic display showed footage that made several senior board members' various sensory organs retract in horror. A human was attempting to surf on the edge of a temporal anomaly, while another practiced what they called solar flare dancing. This cannot be normal behavior for a spacefaring species, declared High Medical Administrator Vix, their quantum consciousness flickering with distress. Surely there must be some explanation. We've conducted extensive studies, Dr. Nix added, her tentacles now permanently twisted into anxiety spirals. The more we try to understand, the more baffling it becomes. Last week, a human declined regenerative treatment for severe plasma burns because, and I quote, "These scars will look awesome at the next Extreme Sports Galaxy Championship." The footage continued, showing humans participating in activities that the AI had categorized under mathematically impossible to survive. Yet, somehow they do. The board watched in collective horror as a group of humans played what they called tag through an asteroid field during a solar storm. Perhaps, suggested one board member, their crystalline form vibrating with concern, we should classify this as a form of species-wide psychosis. We tried, Dr. Zorak sighed. The Human Psychological Review Board rejected our proposal. Apparently, this behavior is considered normal and culturally significant. The emergency alert system suddenly blared to life. Incoming human patients, the AI announced. Multiple casualties from something called extreme quantum tunneling parkour. The board watched as the emergency ward screens filled with readings that defied several laws of physics. Humans materialized on the teleport pads, some of them partially out of phase with normal spacetime, all of them grinning despite their injuries. That was epic, one of them declared, their voice echoing oddly due to temporal displacement. Did you see how I phased through that quantum barrier? Best run ever. The Medical Ethics Board collectively began producing stress hormones at rates that threatened to overload the station's filtration systems. We need, High Administrator Vix declared, their quantum consciousness now showing signs of existential crisis, to establish new protocols. Our current medical guidelines never anticipated a species that actively seeks out near-death experiences for fun. Already tried that, Dr. Nix responded wearily. We implemented new safety protocols last month. The humans turned them into a competition to see who could break the most regulations in a single expedition. The footage continued, showing humans engaging in activities that made several board members' universal translators short-circuit in protest. Magnetic field surfing, neutron star diving, and something particularly alarming called black hole slingshot racing. Perhaps, suggested a board member whose species communicated through crystalline resonance, we should simply accept that humans are completely insane, offered another board member. I was going to say uniquely resilient, the first member corrected diplomatically. The emergency alert sounded again. Incoming human patient, the AI announced. Warning. Patient is attempting to give high fives while partially phased through quantum spacetime. The Medical Ethics Board unanimously voted to adjourn the meeting and retire to the relaxation chambers, which had been expanded to occupy an entire deck of the station. Dr. Zarax made one final note in the official record. Human approach to medical care can best be summarized as, what doesn't kill you makes for a better story. Finding common ground. The solution, when it finally came, was as unexpected as humans themselves. It began during what the medical staff had begun to call just another Tuesday, which, according to the station's AI, meant multiple humans arriving with physically impossible injuries while being impossibly cheerful about them. Dr. Zarax was updating the station's medical protocols. Again, when Ambassador Riker limped into his office, sporting what appeared to be a combination of quantum scarring and temporal displacement burns. Before you say anything, Riker grinned, you should see the other guy. Did you know you can play tennis with quantum singularities? But something was different this time. Dr. Zarax's crystalline structure detected a subtle shift in the human's biochemical signatures. Ambassador, he ventured, his voice modulator carefully neutral. You seem contemplative. Riker sat down, wincing slightly as reality attempted to reassert itself around their partially phase-shifted form. You know, Doc, we've been thinking. After that last incident with the galaxy-wide Extreme Sports Championship, you mean the event that caused 3 different species to rewrite their laws of physics? Dr. Zarax's crystalline structure chimed with what might have been sarcasm. Yeah, that one. Riker nodded. We realized something. Maybe. And hear me out on this. Maybe we could combine our approaches. Dr. Zarax's secondary heart skipped several beats. Combine. Think about it. Riker continued, pulling out their personal device to show a proposal that made Dr. Zarax's crystalline structure vibrate with both terror and fascination. What if we created a new medical protocol? One that lets us keep our, let's call them adventure mementos, while still using your amazing healing technology. The proposal was elegantly simple, modified regenerative treatments that would heal the dangerous injuries while preserving what humans called the cool scars. A compromise between the human need for epic stories and the medical staff's desire to keep their patients alive. We get to keep our badges of honor, Riker explained, and you get to stop worrying about us accidentally phasing out of existence because we refuse treatment for quantum tunneling burns. Dr. Zarax studied the proposal, his crystalline structure gradually shifting from stressed iridescence to a more contemplative blue. This might actually work. The news spread through the station faster than a human could say, hold my beer and watch this. The medical staff emerged from their relaxation chambers. The AI began recalculating its crisis protocols. Even the ethics board showed signs of recovering from their collective existential crisis. In the months that followed, a new era of human-alien medical cooperation emerged. Humans continued their reality-defying adventures, but now worked with the medical staff to ensure their story souvenirs didn't actually kill them. The station's relaxation chamber usage dropped by 60%. Dr. Zarax made his final entry in the station's medical logs. Conclusion: humans will never stop seeking the impossible. They will never cease their quest to defy death, physics, and common sense. But perhaps that's not a flaw to be corrected. It's a feature to be managed. They teach us that the universe is less about survival and more about living. P.S. Still requisitioning additional relaxation chambers. The humans have started a quantum extreme sports league, and I've learned to prepare for the impossible. As if on cue, the emergency alert sounded. Incoming human patients, the AI announced, almost cheerfully now. Multiple cases of antimatter surfing injuries. All patients reporting totally worth it. Dr. Zarax's crystalline structure chimed with what might have been laughter. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. End of report. Status: amended. Classification: humans, enthusiastic defiers of reality, now with better medical coverage.